Greetings. I am Reverend Yue McCormick, head minister of Enduzan, Perfect Dragon Mountain, Shinganji, True Vow Temple of the Nichiren Shu Sangha of the San Francisco Bay Area. In this presentation in 3 parts, it is my goal to cover those things about the life of Nichiren Shonin that Nichiren Shu expects its clergy to know. I feel that this might also be of interest to dedicated lay practitioners, as well as those who are curious about Nichiren Buddhism and would like to know more about its founder. In addition to the history and teachings of Nichiren Buddhism, I have also drawn upon material from my narrative biography of Nichiren Shonin called Lotus in a Sea of Flames, and passages from the 7-volume series Writings of Nichiren Shonin, published by the Nichiren Shu Overseas Propagation and Promotion Association. As much as possible, I will allow Nichiren Shonin to tell his own story by reading passages from writings as found in the writings of Nichiren Shonin. On the slides, I will cite these volumes with the initials WNS, the volume number, and the page number of that volume. I also provide citations from corresponding passages, when there are any, in the writings of Nichiren Daishonin, which is in 2 volumes. I will cite these volumes with the initials WND and then the volume and page number. I cite these for the purpose of comparison with the Nichiren Shu translations, and on those occasions when they provide the only English translation widely available. Now let's begin the first of 3 parts. Nichiren Shonin, the founder of Nichiren Buddhism, lived from 1222 to 1282 in Japan during the Kamakura period. It was called that because it was during this period in Japanese history that the first shogunate, or military government, ruled from the city of Kamakura. In the year 1221, the year before Nichiren Shonin was born, there was an attempt by the retired Emperor Gotoba to overthrow the shogunate and restore civilian rule by the imperial court. His attempt failed within a month, and the retired Emperor Gotoba, along with his 2 sons, who were also retired emperors, were all exiled. This incident was known as the Jokyu Rebellion. This incident, and the previous drowning of the boy emperor Antoku during the Battle of Dan no Ura, when the shogunate came to power in 1185, were things that deeply affected Nichiren, who wondered why the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas did not lend their protection to the emperors, who were regarded as the legitimate rulers of Japan. Japanese Buddhists at that time also believed they were living in the latter age of the Dharma, which many calculated as having begun in the year 1052. It was feared that in the latter age of the Dharma, the true spirit of the Buddha's teachings would be lost, and that people would no longer be able to attain liberation from the cycle of birth and death. Nichiren Shonin, however, taught that it was possible to sow the seed of Buddhahood in the lives of all people through chanting the Odaimoku, our sacred title of the Lotus Sutra, and the verbal formula of Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Nichiren believed that if people upheld the true intention of the Buddha's teachings as taught in the Lotus Sutra, they would be able to realize that this world is actually the pure land of eternally tranquil light of the eternal Shakyamuni Buddha, and that it is here and now where Buddhahood can be realized. To appreciate how he arrived at his convictions about the Lotus Sutra and the practice of Odaimoku, and the great challenges he met in propagating the Lotus Sutra and decrying teachings that would lead people away from it, let us examine the major events in his life. Note that the age of Nichiren is given according to the Japanese way, whereby a person is considered 1 year old at birth. Going by a North American way of counting age, he would be 1 year younger than the ages given in this presentation. There are no references in Nichiren's writings as to the date of his birth. However, the Hokkei Honmon Shu, or the essential writings of the original gate of the Dharma Flower School, the Tokei Yobun Shu, collection of this household's essential documents, written by Nichigyo, who lived around the time of Nichiren Shonin, and other related documents, report that his birth was on the 16th day of the 2nd lunar month of the 4th year of Jokyu, or 1222 of the Common Era. According to the Gregorian calendar, this date would have been April 6. Today, however, his birthday is celebrated on February 16th. In his writing, Questions and Answers on the Honzon Mondosho, Nichiren Shonin wrote, I, Nichiren, am a child of a fisherman in Kataumi, the village of Tojo, the district of Nagasa in Awa province. His place of birth is presumed to be near the old town of Kominato, which is now part of Kamogawa City in Chiba Prefecture, but due to geological changes, it is probably now under the sea. It is commonly said, but not certain, that his father was named Nukina Shigetada, and his mother was called Umegiku. Little is known of his parents, though two writings attributed to Nichiren Shonin, the Sado Gokanki Sho and the Sado Go Sho. The claim is made that he was the son of a humble fisherman, and therefore he would have been considered a Chandala, or outcast, in the Brahmanist culture of the Buddha. In her book Original Enlightenment and the Transformation of Medieval Japanese Buddhism, Jackie Stone says of his background, attempts on the part of later hagiographers to furnish Nichiren with illustrious forebears are most likely unfounded. Still, his family may not have been altogether as humble as he indicates. Recent scholarship suggests that his father may have been a manager, shoshi, or official, shokan, of the local manor, or shoen, perhaps in charge of administering fishing rights held by the shoen proprietor. Nichiren Shonin's childhood name is said to have been Zenichi Maro. Zenichi means splendid son, while Maro is an affectionate suffix used for boys. In his writing, Questions and Answers on the Honzon Mandosho, Nichiren Shonin wrote, "At the age of 12, I went to Kiyosumi-dera Temple in the same Tojo district to study. However, since this was a remote place, even though it was called a temple, there were no scholars there. That's why I visited other provinces as part of my training and study. Because I was a nobody and had no one who could teach me, it was difficult to learn about the origin of the 10 schools and the comparative superiority among them. So I earnestly prayed, beseeching the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas for assistance, and pondered the teachings in all the sutras." In 1233, Nichiren Shonin's bright and questioning mind attracted the attention of the nun proprietress of the local manor for whom his father worked. Her patronage enabled him to enter the local Seichoji temple, also called Kiyosumi-dera, where he could receive an education and begin his quest for his many questions about life. Seichoji had been founded in the year 771 when a monk known only as Fushigi, which means mystery, first carved an oaken statue of Space Repository Bodhisattva, Kashagarbha Bodhisattva in Sanskrit, in Japanese Kokuzo Bosatsu, and enshrined it as the Honzon, or focus of devotion. The temple later fell upon hard times, but was restored in 836 by the third abbot of the head temple of the Tendai school, the great master Jikaku. In 1096, it was hit by lightning and destroyed by fire, but was rebuilt by the imperial provincial overseer. Since that time, Seichoji had become a major temple in Awa province and a regional center for the study of Tendai teachings and esoteric practices, as well as the ubiquitous pieties of Pure Land Buddhism, centered on faith in Amitabha Buddha, the Buddha of infinite light. It later changed its affiliation to the Shingon school. In 1949, due to the exhaustive efforts of the people involved, Seichoji Temple was converted into a Nichiren Shu temple. At Seichoji, Zenichi Maro was given the name Yakuo Maro. Yakuo means medicine king, and is also the name of one of the major bodhisattvas who has a prominent role in several chapters of the Lotus Sutra. At the age of 16 in 1237, Nichiren Shonin was ordained as a priest. His master was Dozenbo, to whom he would always feel a debt of gratitude. He was given the name Zeishobo Rencho at this time. Rencho means lotus eternal. Zeisho seems to be the first two characters of a four-character phrase meaning this law of arising and ceasing. The suffix bo indicates that the name Zeisho is a temple lodging name. In addition to his master Dozenbo, Nichiren Shonin was also guided in his studies of Tendai doctrine and Pure Land teachings by two older disciples of Dozenbo named Jokenbo and Gijobo. Based on Nichiren Shonin's writings, there are two views about why he became a monk. The first is he had doubts about the afterlife. In a reply to my lady, the nun Myoho, the Myoho Ama Gozen Gohenji, he wrote, "As I contemplate my own life, I, Nichiren, have studied Buddhism ever since I was a child. Our life is uncertain, as exhaling one's breath one moment does not guarantee drawing it the next. It is as transient as the dew before the wind, and its end occurs suddenly to everyone, the wise and the ignorant, the aged and the young. I thought I should study the matter at the last moment of life first of all, before studying anything else." The second view is that Nichiren Shonin wanted to know which sect upheld the true principles of Buddhism. In a letter refuting Ryokanbo and others, the Ha-Ryokanto Gosho, he reported, "In my initial prayer I made a vow that I would not favor any particular sect. I would adopt whichever sect provided evidence of being the teaching of the Buddha and was reasonable. I would be guided solely by the sutras, not by the commentators in India, translators and minister masters in China. I would not be afraid regarding the doctrines of Buddhism of even being punished by a king, not to mention persecutions by the people below him. I would not follow instructions against the Buddha's teachings, even if they were given by my parents, teacher, and elder brother, and that I would speak up honestly as expounded in the sutras, regardless of whether or not people believed me. In the spring of 1239, Densho made the journey to Kamakura in order to further his study of the Pure Land and Zen movements that had taken root there. In 1243, at the age of 22, Densho made his way to Kyoto. There he launched himself upon a course of study that would occupy him for the entirety of a decade. He examined the exoteric and esoteric doctrines and practices of Tendai Buddhism at Nyakuji on Mount Hiei and at Onjoji, head temple of the Jimon branch of Tendai at the mountain's foot. He pondered the mantra teachings of the great master Kobo at Kongobuji temple on Mount Koya. In these places, Nichiren Shonin acquired a first-hand experience of all the forms of Buddhism practiced in Japan, primarily Tendai, but also Shingon, esotericism, Zen meditation, Pure Land piety, and the strict discipline of the Vinaya, or monastic precepts. More importantly, he studied the sutras in order to see for himself what Shakyamuni Buddha actually taught. After many years of study, Nichiren Shonin found that the Lotus Sutra was the culmination of Shakyamuni Buddha's teachings, wherein the ultimate truth of Buddhism is clearly expounded. How did he arrive at this conclusion? In a letter to the people of the Seichoji Temple, Seichoji Daishuchu, Nichiren Shonin wrote, "As a youngster, I was once given the great wisdom from the Bodhisattva space repository in human form. Probably feeling pity for me due to my prayers, pleading to become the wisest man in Japan, a large gem as big as the morning star was given to me, which I received in my right sleeve. As a result, I was able to read all the scriptures of Buddhism, perceiving the comparative superiority among the 8 schools and among all the scriptures of Buddhism." Whatever space repository may or may not have given him, Nichiren Shonin realized that the Buddha had left clear instructions in the Nirvana Sutra, his final teaching, concerning what one can rely upon in one's search for the truth. 4 alliances were that practitioners should rely on the Dharma as taught by the Buddha and not the opinions of ordinary people. Rely on the inner meaning of the Dharma and not the words used to express it. Rely on the wisdom of the Buddha and not on discursive knowledge. And rely on the sutra that is definitive and not those sutras whose meaning is indeterminate. As the Nirvana Sutra taught, he would follow the Buddha's Dharma and not the opinions of scholars. So he looked to what the Buddha actually said to determine if the Lotus Sutra was indeed the king of sutras. Nichiren Shonin found that in the Infinite Meaning Sutra, the Buddha said, "In more than these 40 years, I have not yet revealed the truth." This indicated that none of the other sutras revealed the truth, and that only the Lotus Sutra contained the fullest and most complete expression of the Buddha's teaching, as the Infinite Meaning Sutra is considered an introduction to the Lotus Sutra. In the Lotus Sutra itself, he found statements such as the following from chapter 23. Just as he, the Buddha, is the king of the Dharma, this sutra is the king of all sutras. Some might suggest that the Nirvana Sutra might also claim to be the Buddha's final teaching, but Nichiren Shonin found passages in the Nirvana Sutra itself that suggested it was meant to be a reiteration of the teaching of the Lotus Sutra for those who had missed it or walked out on it. The Nirvana Sutra was like the gleaning that occurs after the main harvest. So of all the sutras the Buddha taught during his lifetime, it was indeed the Lotus Sutra that was foremost. At the age of 32, Nichiren Shonin returned to Seichoji Temple. It is said that on the morning of April 28th, 1253, he faced the rising sun at the top of Mount Kiyosumi and chanted Namu Myoho Renge Kyo 10 times, thus initiating his mission to spread the wonderful Dharma. He also gave himself the name he is known by today, Nichiren. The name means sun lotus. The image of the sun and the lotus flower, of course, figure prominently in the Lotus Sutra. In chapter 21 it says, "Just like the sun and the moon can dispel darkness, such a person practicing in the world can dispel the fundamental darkness of all living beings." In chapter 15, it says of the Bodhisattvas, "They are untainted by the ways of the world, just as a lotus flower in the water." These are the qualities that Nichiren Shonin wished to embody. In a letter to the wife of Shijo Kingo, or Shijo Kingo Nyobo Dono Gosho, attributed to Nichiren Shonin, it is written, Is there anything brighter than the sun and moon? Is there anything purer than the lotus flower? The Lotus Sutra is the sun and the moon and the lotus flower. Therefore it is called Myoho Renge Kyo, the sutra of the lotus flower of the wonderful Dharma. Nichiren is also like the sun and moon and also like the lotus flower. The earliest written evidence we have for his use of the name Nichiren appears in the record of seeing Fudo and Aizen Myoho, or the Fudo Aizen Kankenki, dated June 25, 1254. Shonin is a title of respect which can be translated as saint, though it is originally a Confucian term that means sage. In Persecutions Befalling Nichiren Shonin, Shonin Gonanji, Nichiren Shonin wrote, I, Nichiren, started the propagation of the Lotus Sutra on the 28th day of the 4th month in the 5th year of Kensho, or 1253, in the district of Tojo, Nagasa County of Awa Province. On the south side of the Hall of the Buddha, I started preaching the teaching of the Lotus Sutra at noon. This occasion of Nichiren Shonin's first Dharma talk is commemorated every April 28th as the establishment of the Nichiren order. It is traditionally thought that on this occasion he uttered his 4 maxims against the other schools of Buddhism that were popular in his day. The 4 maxims can be found in later writings in Nichiren Shonin. They are, Nembutsu leads to the hell of incessant suffering, Zen is the work of heavenly devils, Shingon ruins the country, and Ritsu is a traitor to the nation. Nichiren Shonin himself said in a letter refuting Ryokanbo and others, I considered the issues and began to criticize the Pure Land and Zen sects around the spring of the 5th year of the Kensho era, 1253, when I was 32 years old, and later I also criticized the Shingon sect. Nichiren Shonin's criticism of the popular Pure Land teachings of Honen was very shocking to his teacher Dozenbo and many others in and around Seichoji Temple. The Pure Land movement taught that Buddhahood could only be attained after death in a heavenly Pure Land by chanting the name of the Buddha of Infinite Light. In place of this practice, Nichiren Shonin taught the practice of chanting the sacred title, Odaimoku, of the Lotus Sutra, which is Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. He taught the Odaimoku as a practical and accessible way in which all people can realize the deepest truths of Buddhism. Just as the name of a country can bring to mind all the characteristics of that country, the title of the Lotus Sutra embodies all the merits and virtues of the Buddha expounded in the sutra. Nichiren Shonin taught that by chanting the Odaimoku, we can directly receive the ultimate truth of the Lotus Sutra from the eternal Shakyamuni Buddha and attain Buddhahood within our lifetime. Nichiren Shonin's first sermon immediately made enemies for him. The local steward, Tojo Kagenobu, was a fervent practitioner of Pure Land Buddhism. He considered Nichiren Shonin's sermon blasphemous and sought to arrest him. His life in danger, Nichiren Shonin fled to Kamakura. According to Eiichi Terao in the History and Teachings of Nichiren Buddhism, it is said that his flight occurred on the day Nichiren Shonin first revealed his teachings and established his school. However, it is thought that most probably this occurred after September 3rd, 1254. With that, I bring the first part of this 3-part presentation of the life and teachings of Nichiren Shonin to a close. I hope that this presentation was helpful and informative, and will help you enrich your faith in and practice of Nichiren Buddhism.